For decades, farmers saved seeds from their harvests. It was the cycle of life: plant, grow, harvest, replant. Simple, sustainable. That is, until Monsanto came along. They engineered seeds designed to survive herbicides, so farmers could spray fields and kill weeds without harming crops. Sounds helpful, right? Well, they've patented those seeds. So now, instead of saving seeds naturally, farmers had to sign contracts agreeing not to replant them. They had to buy new seeds every season. Break that contract, and Monsanto would come knocking. Enter Mike Wallace, a farmer from Iowa who believed he had the right to grow food without corporate control. He refused to play by Monsanto's rules and saved seed from his Monsanto crops, setting the stage for an epic legal battle that could change the way we grow food forever. For years, Monsanto sent investigators into rural towns, watched farmers from afar, and collected samples to check whether they used their patented seeds. But Mike didn't care. He wanted to farm freely. However, after taking samples from his field, Monsanto sent him a letter accusing him of patent infringement and demanding compensation. This marked the beginning of a 3-year legal ordeal that pitted Mike against a billion-dollar agro giant. In 2009, Monsanto filed suit against Mike, alleging that he had knowingly used its Roundup-ready soybeans, corn, and canola without paying royalties. They demanded $1.7 million, citing alleged damages. But Mike argued that contamination was unavoidable. Wind, weather, and cross-pollination could easily spread genetically modified seeds into neighboring farms. So even if Mike hadn't planted Monsanto seeds, there's a chance they could have ended up in his fields anyway. As the trial approached, emotions ran high. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, waving signs that read, "Monsanto out and do unbe evil." Inside the courtroom, lawyers battled it out, each trying to prove their client's innocence. For Monsanto, this case was just another routine lawsuit. They'd won similar cases before. Farmers often settled out of fear, but Mike refused to back down. His determination shocked everyone. Was this seasoned farmer ready to risk everything for his beliefs? At first, the court seemed to favor Mike. In 2011, a jury ruled that he had not infringed on Monsanto patents. But the victory was short-lived. A state appeals court overturned the ruling. They said that since Mike admitted to saving and reseeding, he must have known that he was violating the law. It seemed like Monsanto was on track to win. But this was just the beginning. As the trial dragged on, it became clear that Mike wasn't giving up. He took the case to Federal District Judge Robert Pratt. For 3 days, they argued over whether the case should be decided by a jury or a judge alone. Eventually, Pratt sided with Monsanto, claiming that deciding the case himself would be more efficient. Many thought this meant the end for Mike, but he was ready to fight. With help from his lawyer, Andrew Kimbrell, and an organization called the Organic Seed Growers and Industry Association, he managed to bring the case before the U.S. Supreme Court. But why did Mike really take on Monsanto? To answer that question, we need to look at the events that led him to this moment. Born and raised in Iowa, farming was in Mike's blood. After graduating from college, he returned home to run the family farm. However, he soon noticed that traditional farming was becoming increasingly difficult. New technologies promised higher yields and fewer pests, but they came with a catch. Companies like Monsanto wanted farmers to buy new seeds every year instead of saving seeds from their harvest. So in 2006, Mike planted his first genetically modified crops. At first, things went well. But when he tried to save seeds from those crops, he ran into trouble. You see, Mike didn't realize that by saving these seeds, he was violating Monsanto's patents. It all started when he planted some corn. The next year, he saved seeds from that corn and planted them again. But the new crop didn't taste or look right. Then it hit him. He realized that some of the corn had been cross-pollinated with genetically modified corn from a neighboring farm. When this happened again with his soybeans, Mike contacted Monsanto for help. But instead of providing solutions, the company threatened him with a lawsuit. That's when Mike decided to stop planting Monsanto crops altogether. But his troubles were far from over. Mike soon received a letter from Monsanto. The company claimed that he had used their patented seeds and demanded compensation. At first, Mike thought he might just pay the amount, but the more he researched Monsanto, the more he realized how dangerous the company was. Before buying out, Monsanto had faced thousands of lawsuits, claiming that their weed killer, Roundup Ready, caused cancer. Instead of addressing these concerns, Monsanto bought out and buried the research, allegedly silencing dozens of scientists. It was at that moment that Mike made a decision. He would stand up to Monsanto and protect his right to grow food without corporate control. He refused to settle and prepared for a long legal battle. However, the road to the U.S. Supreme Court was not easy. Mike's team faced many obstacles, including a lack of funding. Monsanto had deep pockets and could afford to drag the case out for years. Plus, they had a history of intimidating witnesses and buying out opposing parties. Despite these challenges, Mike's team pressed on. They knew that the outcome of this case would have far-reaching implications for farmers everywhere. If Mike lost, other farmers would be forced to comply with Monsanto's demands and buy new seeds every season. But if Mike won, it would send a message to corporations that ordinary people could stand up to them and win. In 2013, Mike's team finally reached the U.S. Supreme Court. Unfortunately, the court declined to hear the case, leaving Mike with no choice but to return to district court. There he faced a tough decision. Should he continue fighting Monsanto or settle out of court? Going back to district court felt like defeat, but the longer he fought, the deeper in debt he'd get. Plus, his health was suffering. Years of stress and worry had taken a toll on him, but Mike was a farmer through and through. He understood the importance of planting for the future. If he gave up now, Monsanto would feel empowered to sue other farmers. But if he kept fighting, he could inspire others to resist corporate greed. In the end, Mike decided to keep going. He believed that if he lost, future generations of farmers would never escape the corporate grip. So with renewed determination, he headed back to court. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witnesses argued over whether Mike had violated Monsanto's patents. Finally, the jury reached a verdict. To his surprise, they found that Mike had not infringed on any patents. In fact, they awarded him $86,000 for Monsanto's trespass on his land. But this victory was short. A state appeals court quickly overturned the ruling, stating that Mike had failed to provide enough evidence. Once again, it seemed like Monsanto was on the verge of winning. But Mike refused to give up. He appealed the ruling and prepared for yet another legal battle. And who can blame him? After all, he was fighting for his right to grow food without corporate interference. The Iowa Supreme Court heard arguments in January 2016. But in February, they handed down a devastating blow. They ruled that Mike's contract with Monsanto prevented him from bringing the case to court. Devastated but defiant, Mike continued to fight. He appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, which ultimately declined to hear the case. All hope seemed lost. By 2016, the battle had taken a toll on Mike. He was exhausted and discouraged. The endless paperwork, mounting debt, and constant media attention had worn him down. In the end, he agreed to settle with Monsanto. Although the terms of the settlement remained confidential, reports indicate that it included an undisclosed payment. Plus, Mike had to pay Monsanto's legal fees. For Monsanto, the case was closed. Another victory under their belt. But for Mike, it was a bitter pill to swallow. It seemed like all his hard work had been for nothing. But maybe that's where the real story lies, in Mike's willingness to stand up for what he believed in, despite the odds being stacked against him. His story inspires us all to speak out against injustice and demand a better future for ourselves and our planet. As for Monsanto, their tactics didn't change. They continued to threaten farmers and buy out scientists, all in the name of profit. Their Roundup weed killer remained a hot commodity, despite thousands of lawsuits claiming it caused cancer. Today, the company faces a mountain of litigation. Maybe one day justice will hold them accountable. Until then, Mike's story serves as a reminder that one man's fight for justice can inspire change around the world. Do you believe corporations should own the rights to seeds? Do patents on life-harm food security? What happens when one company controls most of the world's food supply? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this video, don't miss the next captivating episode in our series exploring the unseen forces that shape our world. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery. Let's uncover more hidden realities together.